Pregnant wife confronts millionaire in hospital, finds him supporting his mistress through surgery. Life can shatter in an instant, especially when people put trust in those closest to them. Elena Powell, a once hopeful mother-to-be, never imagined that her marriage to Charles, an influential millionaire with a string of successful startups, would unravel before her eyes. Yet here she is, clutching her pregnant belly while bracing herself for a revelation that seems too horrifying to believe. The weight of a terrible suspicion has driven her to Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan on a stormy night, seeking answers for her husband's sudden absence. What she encounters there changes everything. Charles, standing by another woman's bedside, offering comfort that should have been Elena's. Elena Powell had met Charles at a charity gala 2 years earlier. She remembered that night vividly. The clinking of champagne flutes, the gentle hum of classical music in the background, the swirl of elegant gowns across polished floors. At the time, Charles was well known for his philanthropic work in New York, though rumors whispered about his cutthroat business style. Elena saw something else in him, a charming warmth beneath his tailored suit, a kindness in his eyes as he spoke of giving back to the community. By the end of that night, she was captivated. They dated for 6 months before Charles proposed, producing a one-of-a-kind diamond ring he claimed had been in his family for generations. Despite occasional rumors about Charles's past relationships and the uneasy feeling that some details never quite added up, Elena dismissed her doubts. She believed the fleeting tensions were just part of learning to be together in his high-profile world. After all, Charles had insisted on whisking her away to Europe for a grand vacation, introducing her to renowned chefs and iconic museums. He wanted to prove his devotion, and Elena took it as proof indeed. Their wedding was a lavish affair held in the Catskills, complete with a 6-tier cake and hundreds of guests from upper-class circles. Elena's childhood friends could barely recognize the simple girl from the Bronx, who now wore designer gowns like a second skin. But the truth was, Elena never cared about the money. What dazzled her was the dream Charles wove, a life where they would share success, philanthropy, and above all, true partnership. For months, it felt real. When Elena discovered she was pregnant, she was overjoyed and convinced everything would be perfect. Charles offered to hire the best prenatal care in the city, even securing a top obstetrician from Mount Sinai Hospital. The baby's ultrasound images adorned their mantle, framed in silver. Elena called her sister daily, gushing about feeling the baby's first kicks. Charles, for his part, seemed supportive. He attended every appointment, placed his hand on her bump at night, and whispered about all the incredible things they would do as a family. But cracks began to show a few months into her pregnancy. For one, Charles started coming home late more frequently, claiming back-to-back meetings or urgent business trips without warning. Their house staff would sometimes mention, in hushed confusion, that Charles's car had been gone at odd hours. He was also increasingly secretive about his phone. Elena tried to confront him gently, but Charles brushed her off with a confident laugh, explaining that new endeavors demanded extra attention. "I'm doing it all for us, so our child can have everything," he would say, ending the discussion with a quick kiss on her forehead. Elena told herself to trust him, yet a strange unease gnawed at her, especially after an unexpected phone call one evening. He answered in another room, voice hushed, and once he returned, he looked visibly shaken. When Elena asked, he lied. She could see it in his eyes. The next day, a bouquet of roses arrived for her, just because, which was sweet, but felt like an attempt to cover up some other concern. She decided not to press him further. Her health and the baby's well-being were her main priorities. Still, doubt lingered. She woke up in the middle of the night, consumed by worries about their future. Charles was rarely in bed when she did. He often paced the halls or worked on his laptop, the blue glow from the screen illuminating his furrowed brow. Something was deeply wrong, but Elena had no clue where it might lead. She could never have imagined. It would lead to a hospital corridor with her greatest fears glaring her straight in the face. It was around her 6th month of pregnancy that Elena first experienced an unsettling dream. In it, she stood in a stark hospital room, alone, searching for Charles. She could hear beeping machines and hushed voices, but whenever she tried to open the door to find him, the handle slipped from her grasp. She woke up drenched in sweat, tears staining her cheeks. The dream felt like a warning, but she dismissed it as a product of her hormonal state and the anxiety of impending motherhood. Meanwhile, life outside Elena's anxious nights continued. Charles's fortune ballooned even further when he made a triumphant business deal overseas. He returned with expensive gifts, including a vintage Chanel maternity coat for Elena, claiming he wanted her to be stylish as her belly grew. The extravagant gesture was overshadowed by a tidbit of gossip Elena overheard from one of Charles's colleagues at a dinner party, something about a business partner, a young woman rumored to be a rising star in the corporate world. When Elena pressed for more details, the colleague looked uncomfortable and simply said, "Oh, don't worry, dear. She's just a consultant." For the next week, Elena convinced herself there was nothing more to it. After all, Charles was often around talented, ambitious women in business. That was part of his world. Why should this one be any different? But then the nightmares returned. On top of that, the house phone occasionally rang once in the middle of the night, then disconnected. The butler found notes slipped under the gate, sometimes blank, sometimes with cryptic messages about knowing the truth. Elena felt on edge, certain that something was happening just beyond her awareness. Determined to regain her peace, she confided in her best friend, Tessa, who was married to a prominent lawyer in the city. Over tea at the Plaza Hotel, Elena revealed her suspicions, Charles's late nights, the strange phone calls, the whispered gossip. Tessa urged her to sit down with Charles and talk openly. "Don't let it fester," Tessa said, stirring honey into her tea. "Men like Charles get so entangled in their careers that sometimes they forget how important honesty is at home." Taking Tessa's advice, Elena planned a romantic dinner. She cooked Charles's favorite meal, rosemary lamb chops with roasted vegetables, and set the table with candles and soft music. As soon as he walked in the door, she gently insisted they talk before he could bury himself in emails. Charles appeared anxious, but he agreed. At first, he brushed off her concerns as exaggerations. When she pressed him, though, his eyes flitted away. Eventually he said, "There's nothing going on. I promise," in a tone that suggested finality, not comfort. That night, Elena tried to believe him. Yet, even as they embraced in bed, she sensed a gulf between them. His body felt tense against hers. She decided to look deeper on her own. Over the next few days, while Charles was at meetings, Elena went through his study. She found receipts from expensive restaurants where they had never dined together. She discovered a photo hidden in one of his desk drawers, Charles standing very close to a woman with striking features, her long hair draping over a sleek black dress. On the back was scribbled, "Sasha." Heart-pounding, Elena took pictures of every clue with her phone. She considered calling the number on the receipts, but fear held her back. She needed more proof, or perhaps he was scared to face the truth. Late one afternoon, a letter arrived via courier, addressed only to Miss S. Powell. Inside was a single typed line, "Ask Charles about Sasha." No signature, no return address. Elena felt a chill run through her. She clutched her rounded belly, silently praying she was wrong about whatever this all meant. In her heart, she knew the confrontation she dreaded was getting closer, and with each passing day, the tension in their household grew thicker. Soon, everything would come crashing down in a place neither she nor Charles could have anticipated: the cold, sterile halls of a hospital. Elena could not shake the name Sasha from her mind. She spent hours online, searching for any sign of a woman connected to Charles. She scanned social media but found no direct mention. The suspense made her restless, and her pregnancy hormones magnified every emotion. She began to feel physically unwell, experiencing more frequent bouts of nausea and dizzy spells. Her obstetrician at Mount Sinai Hospital, Dr. Miranda Lewis, advised her to reduce stress for the baby's sake. But how could she when she felt her marriage slipping away? In an attempt to calm her turmoil, Elena threw herself into philanthropy. She assisted with a fundraiser for a local women's shelter and tried to channel her anxiety into something positive. While volunteering, Elena learned about the difficulties of single mothers and realized just how fortunate she was, or at least, how fortunate she used to feel. Her heart ached for these women, and she donated funds on Charles's behalf. But even that gesture reminded her that she wasn't sure where her husband's loyalty truly lay. One evening, Elena spotted Charles talking quietly on his cell phone in the garden. She could see him from the kitchen window, gesturing animatedly, as though urging the other person to remain calm. After he came inside, she pressed him. "Who were you speaking to?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. Charles froze, then forced a casual smile. "Just a business associate," he replied, tossing his phone onto the coffee table. "We're finalizing details for a new project." Elena wanted to ask if the associate was Sasha, but her courage faltered. She felt her blood pressure spike, a warning that she needed to remain calm for the baby. That same night, while Charles slept, Elena picked up his phone, which he had carelessly left unlocked. Scrolling through the call logs, she saw multiple calls to an unsaved number. A lump formed in her throat. Then she spotted a text message thread between Charles and that same contact. "Charles to unknown. Everything is arranged. Don't worry, I'll cover your expenses." Unknown to Charles, the first scared. "Please come to the appointment tomorrow if you can." The appointment? Her heart pounded. Charles had told her he'd be in back-to-back meetings the following day, nowhere near a hospital. Yet here it was, in black and white. Someone needed him for an appointment, and he intended to be there. Elena carefully took pictures of the messages with her own phone, her hands trembling. What kind of appointment was it? Was Sasha ill, or was she pregnant too? A jolt of anger and terror coursed through Elena. The possibility that Charles was fathering another child at the same time as their unborn baby made her stomach churn. She had no one to turn to but Tessa, yet she felt too ashamed to share this fresh discovery. She resolved to handle it herself, at least for now. The next day, Elena followed Charles. She watched him drive to a tall building in Midtown. Carefully tailing him, she saw him enter what looked like a private medical clinic. She lingered in the lobby, wearing oversized sunglasses, her hood pulled over her head. After nearly an hour, Charles reappeared, his face etched with worry, alongside a woman in a black coat who clung to his arm. Elena's heart wrenched. Though she couldn't see the woman's face clearly, the slender figure and confident stride radiated an elegance that Elena had never seen in herself. Elena's vision blurred with tears. She slipped away before they could notice her. Her head spun with too many possibilities. Had Charles been paying for this woman's medical treatment? Was the relationship purely about health or something more? That night, she confronted him again, but he lied once more, telling her he'd been at a board meeting. Instead of pressing further, Elena quietly noted his every word, determined to catch him in his web of deceit. Little did she know, within a short span of time, fate would intervene with brutal clarity, forcing them both to face the truth under the harsh fluorescent lights of a hospital ward. 2 days later, Elena was at home, trying to distract herself by reading a parenting book. But her mind wandered relentlessly, conjuring up every worst-case scenario. The ring of the landline jarred her out of her trance. It was unusual for someone to call the home number. She picked it up, and a frantic voice crackled through the speaker. "Is this Charles Powell's home? This is Mount Sinai Hospital. There's been an emergency involving Sasha. She's in surgery. Mr. Powell is listed as her primary contact. We need him here immediately." Who am I speaking to? Elena's heart felt like it might explode. Sasha was at Mount Sinai, the same hospital where she and Charles had scheduled her own prenatal visits. And Charles was the emergency contact, not her own family. The silence stretched thick in the air before Elena managed a shaky reply. This is his wife." The words tasted bitter on her tongue. "Could you please let him know? We tried calling his cell, but there's no answer," the nurse continued, sounding apologetic. "It's quite urgent. She needs someone to sign off on some paperwork, and she's asked specifically for Mr. Powell." Elena told the nurse she understood, but she didn't say she would tell Charles right away. Instead, she hung up, pressing a trembling hand to her face. Every scenario she had dreaded was coming to life. Sasha was more than just a fling. She was entangled with Charles to the point that the hospital recognized him as her closest contact. Summoning courage, Elena decided to handle this in her own way. She quickly grabbed her keys and waddled her pregnant form to the car, ignoring the questions from a concerned housekeeper. She had to see for herself what was happening. The drive across the city felt surreal. Traffic was congested, and every red light mocked her impatience. She felt tears burning her eyes as she steered through the chaos, but she stifled them, focusing only on reaching the hospital. At Mount Sinai, she parked and rushed into the building, ignoring the discomfort in her lower back. She navigated the corridors, guided by the overhead signs, until she reached the reception. Out of breath, she managed to ask about Sasha. The receptionist pointed her toward the emergency surgical wing. When Elena arrived, the hallway was abuzz with medical staff. She scanned the benches until her gaze settled on Charles. He sat with his head in his hands, elbows propped on his knees. His usually immaculate hair was disheveled, his suit jacket wrinkled. For a moment, Elena hesitated. Despite her anger, seeing him like this vulnerable and shaken made her heart pang with conflicting emotions. She approached quietly, and when Charles finally looked up, his eyes widened in horror. He stood abruptly. "Elena, what are you doing here?" His tone was a disbelieving whisper. Elena felt her anger and heartbreak surge. "I got a call. They said you were the emergency contact." "I had no idea you were so involved, Charles. Care to explain?" Her voice trembled with tears she was determined not to shed in this public space. Charles opened and closed his mouth, unable to form words. Before he could respond, a doctor approached. He glanced at Elena, then addressed Charles. "We need a decision about the specialized medication for Miss Sasha. There's a risk of complications. She insisted we consult you. Are you her fiancé or—" Elena nearly choked on the word fiancé. The realization that Sasha was not just Charles's mistress, but someone he might have promised to marry, felt like a knife twisting deeper into her back. She fought the urge to collapse, placing a supportive hand on her pregnant belly. Charles looked panic-stricken. "Doc, just do whatever you need to do. I'll sign. Money is no issue." The doctor nodded and left, leaving Charles and Elena face to face, a hurricane of betrayal swirling around them. Before Elena could speak, Charles gently took her arm, guiding her toward a slightly quieter corner of the waiting area. His eyes filled with desperation. "Elena, please, I can explain everything," he whispered. But Elena drew back, her hand protectively on her stomach. She wasn't sure she wanted to hear it, but she needed the truth. In that moment, she felt her entire world splintering. The baby shifted inside her, as though feeling her turmoil. She inhaled shakily, gaze fixed on Charles's eyes. The man she'd married, the father of her unborn child, was standing here, waiting for news about another woman who apparently meant enough to him that the hospital believed he was her closest family. She braced herself, knowing there was no going back. The next words from Charles would either seal their fate or break them completely. Elena's stomach roiled as Charles guided her to a secluded corner near a vending machine. She leaned against the wall, her breath uneven. She expected him to at least have the decency to look ashamed, but there was mostly fear in his eyes, fear of losing control. She recognized it from the times he had faced high-stakes business deals. Only now, it was their marriage on the line. "Elena, you have to understand," he began, voice hushed. "Sasha, she needed help. She got into a bad situation, long story, but I had no choice. I couldn't leave her alone." "Bad situation," Elena repeated, bitterness dripping from each syllable. "You mean she got pregnant with your child?" A cold, direct question, but she had to know. Charles winced. "No, it's not that. She had some health complications, serious ones. I've been paying for her treatments. She can't afford them on her own." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Why you? Why are you the one footing her bills and acting as her fiancé? How did she even become your responsibility?" He bit his lip, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "We dated before I met you. It was a brief relationship, but Sasha was." He hesitated. "She threatened to go public about certain details from my past. That, well, it would ruin our reputation. I didn't want you dragged through any scandals, especially not now with the baby." Elena stared at him in disbelief. "So, you've been blackmailed by your ex-girlfriend? This is why you've been sneaking around, lying to me, letting me worry sick about you?" "It's more complicated than that," Charles said, running a hand through his hair. "She's sick, Elena. I'm not heartless. When she reached out, telling me she had nowhere else to go, I offered help. Yes, she threatened me at first, but then her condition worsened. She's alone, no family, no one else to pay the bills. So I did what I thought was right." Elena could see a flicker of genuine concern in his eyes, but that didn't erase the betrayal she felt. "And you didn't think to tell me? You let me find out this way in a hospital waiting room?" He pressed his lips together. "I thought it would hurt you. I wanted to protect you and the baby from stress." She laughed hollowly, the sound echoing down the hallway. "Protect me? Charles, do you know how humiliating this is? I'm your wife, pregnant with your child, and I've had to learn about your secret from a nurse. No wonder you've been so distant." Before he could respond, the doctor re-emerged, his expression grave. "Mr. Powell, we need your signature now. Miss Sasha has asked for your presence before we proceed." Charles glanced at Elena, torn. She stepped aside, tears brimming in her eyes, but her gaze was steely. "Go, do what you need to do." As Charles walked away, Elena felt a wave of nausea. She staggered into a nearby seat, heart pounding violently. Part of her wanted to leave, to escape this nightmare. Yet another part of her needed answers, closure, or maybe just the grim satisfaction of seeing Charles's deceit unravel completely. A sympathetic nurse approached with a cup of water. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need anything?" Elena shook her head, mustering a faint smile, but her mind raced with questions. What else was Charles hiding? How far had this gone? Sasha's identity lingered in Elena's thoughts. Was she truly a desperate, ill ex-girlfriend who had nowhere else to turn? Or was she a manipulative mistress? Or both? Each possibility tormented Elena. She wanted to storm into Sasha's hospital room and demand answers, but something stopped her. Whether it was fear, pride, or simple exhaustion, she could not say. For now, all she could do was wait, foot tapping anxiously against the tile floor. Minutes stretched into an hour, a limbo of heartbreak and tension. Eventually Charles returned, looking shaken. He opened his mouth to speak, but Elena held up a hand. "Not here," she whispered. "I can't do this in a hallway. Find us a private room, then tell me everything." He nodded, defeated. Together, they retreated to a small consultation room. This, Elena realized, was where the most life-altering news of people's lives was often delivered: diagnoses, prognoses, heartbreak. She took a deep breath, bracing herself. Whatever Charles said next would decide if their marriage and their future could still be salvaged. In the cramped consultation room, Elena lowered herself onto a plastic chair, consciously resting a hand on her belly. Charles closed the door behind them, the fluorescent lights above casting harsh shadows. An uncomfortable silence pressed against the walls. Though her tears had dried, Elena's cheeks felt hot with anger and humiliation. When Charles spoke, his voice was subdued. "Sasha and I dated for a few months, right before I met you. She was ambitious, and for a while it seemed like we were on the same path. But we argued a lot, especially about how I did business. She didn't like that I was ruthless," Elena cut in. She recalled the rumors about Charles's cutthroat strategies in the corporate world. He offered a faint, grim smile. "Yes, something like that. After a particularly ugly fight, we broke up. She moved overseas, and I thought that was it. Then, last year, she came back. She reached out to me, claiming she had crucial information that could ruin my reputation: personal emails, audio recordings. I didn't believe her at first, until she sent me snippets. It was real." Elena's heart pounded. What was in them? Charles hesitated. "Things that could be taken out of context, making me look like I bribed officials or manipulated markets. Maybe it's partially true, maybe not. But it would be enough to destroy everything I've built, not just financially, but publicly. I didn't want to drag you into that scandal, especially when we found out you were pregnant. So I offered to help Sasha financially in exchange for her silence." He paused, glancing at the door to ensure no one was listening. At first, it was hush money, plain and simple. But then her health declined. She had these debilitating symptoms: fainting spells, severe pain, something with her kidneys. I'm not entirely sure. She didn't have insurance or family support. She threatened again, saying she'd release the information if I abandoned her. I felt trapped. Elena pressed her lips together. She wanted to scream at him for being so spineless, for letting this woman dictate their lives. Yet part of her also recognized that Charles was a man with a carefully curated image. His empire thrived on trust. If word got out about shady dealings, it could all crumble. She inhaled slowly. "So you lied to me time and again to cover this up?" Charles nodded. "I didn't want you to think less of me." Then Sasha got sicker, and soon it wasn't just about blackmail. I realized she truly needed help. I couldn't bring myself to leave her to die. So I became her emergency contact. I paid her bills, visited her doctors. I told her I'd support her through surgery if needed. But I swear, Elena, there's nothing romantic going on. I'm not cheating. I'm just what? Elena snapped. Being a hero to a woman who threatened you, keeping your pregnant wife in the dark. His gaze dropped. I handled it poorly. I'm sorry. I just never found a good moment to tell you, especially when your own pregnancy has been so important and delicate. Elena's anger flared. You handled it poorly? That's all you can say? Charles, I've been worried sick, imagining you with a mistress. I've questioned my sanity, my worth, our entire marriage. He looked away, hands trembling slightly. I know, and I'm sorry. But please, Elena, you have to believe me when I say this was not about love or lust. It was about protecting our family, our reputation, and yes, even Sasha's life. She stared at the cold tiles, her mind racing. The realization that Sasha might be gravely ill and alone softened a fraction of her rage. But the betrayal still cut deep. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears, remembering the nights she had lain awake. Certain Charles was slipping away. When she finally looked up, Charles's expression was one of pleading vulnerability she had never seen before. So what now? She asked, in a trembling voice. "Are you going to keep supporting her?" He nodded slightly. "Until she's recovered. Once she's stable, I'll arrange something long-term, if needed, so she won't threaten us again." Elena felt hollow. She searched his face for some reassurance, something that could mend the gaping wound in her chest. "If you ever loved me," she said softly, "you would have told me from the start, Charles. You would have trusted me to stand by you. Instead, you shut me out." He reached for her hand, and though she wanted to pull away, she let him grip it. "I'm terrified of losing you," he whispered. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. "You already have, in a way," she said, "but I'm carrying our child. I won't make any rash decisions today." As she spoke, she felt a sudden twinge in her abdomen, a reminder that stress wasn't just hers to carry. She needed to be calm, at least for the baby's sake. She stood slowly. "I need time. We can't fix this in a hospital consultation room. Do what you must for Sasha, if that's truly what's needed. But I'm going home." Charles opened his mouth to speak, but a knock on the door interrupted them. A nurse poked her head in, telling Charles that Sasha was awake and asking for him. Elena met his eyes in a final, pain-filled glance. Then she walked out, tears silently streaming as she navigated the maze of corridors, searching for the exit. She wasn't sure which hurt more, the betrayal or the realization that her husband might have made this sacrifice to protect her and still broken her heart in the process. Rain drummed against the windows as Elena sat alone in the living room that evening, the grand estate feeling emptier than ever. She had left the hospital without seeing Sasha, without speaking another word to Charles. Tessa had texted multiple times, sensing something was off, but Elena couldn't bring herself to reply. She felt shattered, uncertain of what to do next. Later that night, Charles returned. He looked exhausted, his clothes rumpled and his expression grim. Without a word, he sank into the armchair opposite Elena. She stared at him, waiting. Finally, he sighed. "Sasha's stable for now. They're monitoring her closely." Elena nodded, arms folded protectively over her belly. "And how is this going to work? Are you planning to become her personal benefactor?" He rubbed his temples. "It won't be forever, just until she can manage on her own. She doesn't have anybody else." Elena closed her eyes. The thought of someone else's welfare under her husband's protection was still a bitter pill to swallow, but Sasha's predicament did evoke some pity. Illness was no small matter. "I understand she's sick," Elena said softly, "but lying to me was a choice you made." Charles flinched. "I know. It's not something I'm proud of." A tense silence followed. Then Elena spoke again, her voice quivering. "I can't live like this, Charles. The first need to know everything. I need to see for myself. No more secrets." He hesitated. "You want to see Sasha?" "Yes. I want to look her in the eyes and confirm that your story is true. I have to know if she really needed your help or if she's just manipulating you. And if I'm being honest, I think I need to see the woman who's come between us." Charles nodded, resigned. "All right. She'll be in the hospital for a few more days, and then she'll be transferred to a private facility if her condition improves." The following morning, Elena mustered her courage and returned to Mount Sinai. Charles accompanied her, though he seemed jumpy, as if fearing a confrontation. When they entered Sasha's hospital room, Elena felt a swirl of conflicting emotions. Sasha lay in bed, pale and weak, and the fourth drip feeding medication into her arm. Her face, though strikingly beautiful, was gaunt with fatigue. Sasha looked up, eyes widening when she saw Elena. A flicker of something guilt, fear, resentment passed over her features. Before she could speak, Elena stepped forward. "I'm Elena Powell, Charles's wife." She said the words calmly, though her heart pounded. Sasha's gaze flicked to Charles, who lingered by the door. She started, then coughed, wincing in pain. I'm sorry, I never meant for things to get so complicated. Elena swallowed, fighting the urge to lash out. But they did. You threatened him, blackmailed him, didn't you? Sasha's eyes fluttered. At first, yes, I did. But then I got sick and realized that I might actually die alone. I had no family left, no one else to call. Charles was the only person I knew with the resources to help me. She paused, her breathing labored. I don't expect you to forgive me. I had no choice. Anger flared within Elena, but she tempered it with empathy. Sasha did look genuinely ill, her voice weak and frail. You two put me through so much pain, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I'm pregnant, Sasha. I thought my husband was cheating on me with you. Do you realize what that did to me? Sasha's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. All I wanted was a chance to live. I didn't think it would cause this much damage. She closed her eyes, tears rolling down her cheeks. Elena watched silently, torn between outrage and sorrow. A nurse entered, checking Sasha's vital signs and adjusting her drip. When the nurse stepped out, Charles gently placed a hand on Elena's arm. We've seen what we needed to see. Let's let her rest. Elena nodded stiffly, turning to leave. Just as they reached the door, Sasha's voice rasped, Elena, I really am sorry. Elena froze, then offered a curt nod over her shoulder before walking out into the corridor, her chest tight with conflicting emotions. Outside, Elena leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to her swollen belly. She felt the baby move, an unsettling reminder that this stress was not just hers alone. Charles stood beside her, silent and unsure. Slowly, Elena breathed out. I don't condone what she did, she said at last, but I understand now. Charles nodded, looking relieved. Thank you for trying to see reason. Elena met his gaze, her tone steely. This doesn't fix everything, Charles. We still need to address your lies, and I can't just forgive and forget. We need to figure out a way forward, if there even is one. His face clouded, but he nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. But fate had more twists in store for them both. For even as they tried to salvage their marriage, the consequences of Charles's ruthless business dealings loomed, threatening to unleash a new crisis that would test them more than ever before. A week passed, during which Elena tried to focus on her own pregnancy and well-being. She attended yoga classes for expecting mothers and followed every piece of advice from her obstetrician, Dr. Lewis. Meanwhile, Charles spent long hours managing Sasha's transfer to a specialized facility. Though he kept Elena informed, it only deepened the emotional chasm between them. Each night, they shared a bed but barely spoke. Then came the knock on their front door, late one evening. Elena was reading on the sofa when she heard voices in the foyer. She recognized Tessa's concerned tone and the low rumble of a man's voice. Moments later, Tessa appeared in the living room, her face pale. Behind her stood her husband, Martin, a lawyer with a formidable reputation. Tessa held her phone out. Elena, I just got these messages from a mutual acquaintance at the district attorney's office. They say there's an investigation into Charles's business dealings. Something about insider trading and bribery. Subpoenas are going out soon. Elena's mouth fell open. She turned to Charles, who had entered behind them, a look of horror spreading across his face. Charles, what's going on? She asked, dread settling in her gut. Charles inhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. I had a feeling something like this could happen, but I thought we contained it. I need to make a few calls. He retreated to his study, leaving Elena reeling. Tessa placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry. I had no idea until just now. Martin says you might want to prepare for the worst assets, frozen, media coverage. It could all happen very fast. Elena slumped onto the couch. It felt like the ground was crumbling beneath her feet. First, she had discovered her husband's secret support for Sasha. And now this. She briefly wondered if Sasha's threatened revelations had already begun to leak. The stress was suffocating. For the next few days, the estate buzzed with tension as lawyers and PR strategists came and went. Elena tried to stay out of it, but she couldn't avoid the whispers from staff, nor the barrage of phone calls Charles fielded at all hours. She felt her child kicking more fiercely, as if echoing her inner turmoil. One evening, when Charles finally emerged from his study after a marathon conference call, Elena cornered him. "Is this tied to the evidence Sasha has?" she demanded. "Is that how this got out?" Charles looked defeated. "Possibly. It could also be from old competitors who've been waiting for a chance to strike." He sighed heavily. "Elena, there's a chance I could face charges. Even if I'm acquitted, this scandal alone could bankrupt me." She stared at him, stunned. "So our entire life, this mansion, your fortune, everything could disappear?" He nodded, eyes haunted. "Yes." Elena's mind flashed to the baby, to the sense of security she'd always believed they had. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. "Then we'll face it together, if that's what we have to do." Charles looked at her in surprise, as though he didn't expect any support after all that had happened. He reached out to touch her hand, but she drew back slightly. "I'm still hurt," she said quietly, "but I'm not heartless. You're the father of my child." Over the next few days, the crisis escalated. Headlines popped up online: "Millionaire Charles Powell under investigation." Gossip columns hinted at mysterious evidence implicating him in unethical business deals. Elena watched it all unfold from the sidelines, feeling oddly numb. She arranged a meeting with Tessa and Martin to discuss potential financial moves. Her first priority was the future of her unborn child, ensuring they wouldn't lose everything if Charles's empire collapsed overnight. In the midst of the chaos, Charles received a call from Sasha's doctor. Sasha's health had deteriorated once again, requiring an emergency procedure. Charles's face fell as he relayed the news to Elena. "They say she might not make it this time," he said, voice trembling. "She's asking for me." Elena felt her stomach tighten. She knew that Sasha possessed damning evidence that might destroy Charles, but she was also a human being in peril. Could Sasha's failing health and the emerging scandal be connected? Was she planning one final act of revenge or seeking absolution? Against her better judgment, Elena nodded. "Go to her, but if she's truly behind these leaks, find out. We deserve to know." Charles left immediately for the hospital, leaving Elena alone once more in the cavernous mansion. She gazed out the window at the city lights, a storm of uncertainty swirling in her mind. Her entire life, her marriage, her sense of security, her faith in her husband was teetering on the brink of collapse. All she could do was pray that somewhere in all this chaos, a thread of truth and justice would emerge to guide them forward. Elena stood at the threshold of Sasha's hospital room, struggling with whether to go inside. Charles had called earlier, sounding distraught. Sasha was deteriorating, and she was asking to speak to Elena specifically. After everything Sasha had done, blackmail, subterfuge, it felt surreal that she wanted Elena by her bedside. Yet Elena's conscience wouldn't let her refuse. If there was a slim chance Sasha had the key to saving Charles from complete ruin, Elena had to seize it. And there was also the human element. Despite her anger, she knew what it felt like to be alone in a hospital, scared for your life. Stepping into the room, Elena's eyes first landed on the machines beeping softly around Sasha. The once glamorous woman looked frail, her cheeks sunken and her gaze distant. Charles stood by the bed, tension etched into every line of his face. When he saw Elena, his expression shifted to relief, mixed with apprehension. Sasha stirred, fixing her gaze on Elena. A weak smile tugged at her lips. "You came," she whispered. Elena moved closer, arms folded protectively over her bump. "I did." "What do you need from me?" Sasha coughed, wincing. "I'm sorry," she said hoarsely. for everything. I never meant for things to spiral like this. I was scared, sick, and desperate. I thought Charles's money could save me, and yes, I used what I had, those recordings, those files, to blackmail him. Elena listened, her face impassive, and the leaks to the press. Is that your doing? Sasha closed her eyes, tears seeping from the corners. I swear it wasn't me. I gave all that evidence to a friend as insurance in case Charles refused to help me. But I never told them to leak it. I suspect they did it on their own, hoping to profit somehow. They might have sold it to a competitor or a journalist. Charles's shoulders slumped. Who? He asked. Give us a name. Her name is Regina. She was a co-worker of mine from years ago. She knew where I kept everything. I think she sold it when she realized how sick I was. She probably saw an opportunity to make some quick money. I'm sorry, I was too weak to stop it. Elena felt a wave of conflicting emotions, anger, pity, disgust, and a faint glimmer of hope. At least now they had a starting point to track down the leak. Then you can sign an affidavit or something, Elena said, her tone urgent. We can use that to prove Charles is being blackmailed, or at least that the leaks were stolen. Sasha nodded feebly, and Charles's eyes lit with a desperate sort of gratitude. We'll get my lawyers on this, he said quickly, grabbing Sasha's hand. Thank you for telling us. Sasha's lip quivered. I don't want to go to my grave causing more pain than I already have. Her gaze flicked to Elena. I'm sorry you got caught in the crossfire of my desperation. You and your baby deserve better. Elena felt tears prick her own eyes, though she fought them back. There's a lot of hurt to undo, Sasha, but if you're being sincere, then maybe it's not too late to set some things right. Sasha nodded, her breathing uneven. The heart monitor beeped more rapidly. A nurse hurried in, frowning at the readings on the machine. She asked Elena and Charles to step out so they could adjust Sasha's medication. Outside, Charles ran a shaky hand over his face. If we can locate this Regina, maybe we can mitigate the damage. But the scandal's already out there. Even if we prove the data was stolen, it might not undo everything. Elena placed her hand gently on his shoulder. One step at a time. We'll deal with the fallout. Just promise me there will be no more lies, no more secrets. Our child doesn't deserve that. He turned to her, voice trembling with emotion. I promise, Elena. I'm done hiding things. For a moment, they stood there, sharing a fragile sense of unity in the midst of chaos. That night, Elena returned home alone, physically drained and emotionally raw. She looked at the empty mansion and realized that wealth was nothing but a thin veneer for happiness, easily cracked by deceit. Before bed, she received a text from Charles. Thank you for coming. Sasha might not make it through the night. She signed documents admitting her role. Lawyers are on it. We'll keep you posted. Elena stared at the message, then at the ultrasound pictures pinned to the fridge. So much uncertainty loomed, but at least the truth was beginning to emerge. Perhaps tomorrow would bring more answers, and maybe, just maybe, a chance for a fresh start. Sasha passed away in the early hours of the morning, succumbing to complications that even the best doctors at Mount Sinai Hospital could not reverse. Her final confession, documented, notarized, and filed by Charles's lawyers, pointed to Regina as the orchestrator of the leaks, implicating her in criminal behavior. While Charles still had to face intense scrutiny for any genuine wrongdoing in his business dealings, Sasha's affidavit significantly eased the pressure. Prosecutors hesitated to press charges in light of the revelation that the leaks were stolen and manipulated. In the following weeks, Charles launched a full-scale internal audit of his companies to ensure transparency moving forward. Media outlets, once hungry for sensational headlines, turned their attention to more salacious stories elsewhere. As the storm began to subside, Elena found herself balancing a precarious emotional scale: relief that Charles wouldn't be going to prison, anger at his deceptions, and sorrow for Sasha's grim fate. Despite the fact that Sasha had threatened her husband, Elena couldn't deny that the woman's life had been a tragic spiral of desperation. Meanwhile, Elena's pregnancy advanced. Her baby bump had grown quite large, and she was nearing the final trimester. Dr. Lewis strongly advised rest and emotional stability, emphasizing the importance of a peaceful environment. With the scandal quieting down, Elena and Charles began to address the deeper issues in their marriage. One Sunday evening, they sat in the sunroom where they had once shared morning coffees and carefree laughter. Charles sipped tea, glancing at Elena with a mixture of remorse and earnestness. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said quietly. "I've spent my whole life building walls, forging my own path. It took me nearly losing you to realize those walls were keeping you out." Elena considered his words. "You let fear guide you," she replied. "Fear of scandal, fear of losing control. It's what drove you to lie and hide. And I paid the price. Our child almost paid the price too." His gaze flicked to the crest of her belly. "I know. I'm trying to change, to be a better man and father." "Words are easy," Elena said softly, placing her hand over his. "But actions are harder. I need to see your commitment, day in and day out." Charles nodded. Over the next month, he made a genuine effort to rebuild trust. He stepped back from relentless deal-making and spent more time at home. He showed Elena every financial statement, every business meeting schedule, determined to prove he had no more secrets. Elena remained cautious, but she could see he was making strides toward being transparent and, surprisingly, more humble. Soon after, they discussed moving out of the sprawling mansion. Too many memories of deception lingered in those opulent rooms. With Tessa and Martin's help, they found a more modest but welcoming townhouse on the Upper East Side. Elena insisted on decorating the nursery herself, choosing simple, serene designs that felt light years away from their previous life's grandiosity. The day Elena went into labor came with a mix of fear and hope. Charles stood by her side in the delivery room at Mount Sinai, gripping her hand through every contraction. Despite the pain, Elena felt a peculiar calm. They were in the same hospital where so much heartbreak had unraveled, yet here they were, about to bring a new life into the world. When their daughter finally arrived, tiny cries filling the air, Elena sobbed with relief and overwhelming love. Charles held the baby gently, tears in his eyes. "She's beautiful," he whispered, brushing a hand over the newborn's wispy hair. Elena gazed at them both, exhaustion and adoration washing over her. In that moment, it felt like they were given a second chance, an opportunity to write a new chapter, untainted by lies and secrets. Over the next few days, mother and daughter recovered well. Charles remained at the hospital almost around the clock, savoring every moment. He quietly signed new philanthropic pledges, promising a large donation to Mount Sinai in memory of Sasha, an act that both honored the woman whose pain had inadvertently saved him from his own worst actions and underscored his resolve to do better. Life was far from perfect, but as Elena cradled their tiny daughter, she felt a sense of cautious optimism. Time would tell if Charles truly maintained this new course. Yet the worst storms had passed. They had survived betrayal, blackmail, scandal, and heartbreak. And out of the rubble of those trials, they now held in their arms a precious reminder of how fragile and precious life and love truly is. This tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and unexpected redemption shows us how quickly fortunes can rise and fall when deceit takes root. Charles nearly lost everything: his reputation, his livelihood, and most importantly, his loving wife, through a string of lies meant to shield himself from scandal. Sasha, once a threat, became a tragic figure whose final confession offered a path to truth. And Elena, who bore the brunt of these deceptions while carrying her unborn child, found the strength to seek answers, demand honesty, and stand firm for her family's future. If you found yourself gripped by the twists and emotional turns in this story, remember there's always more to explore on this channel. Don't forget to leave a like, share this drama-filled story with friends, and subscribe so you won't miss any new uploads. Your support helps bring more stories that captivate the heart and challenge the spirit.